corner of our backyard was an eyesore, and given that this was taken kind of on an early spring day when there wasn't a lot of growth and the tree did not have any kind of leaves and therefore it looks even more desolate, this is a pretty good representation of what it actually looks like most of the time. When you come out to our backyard, the eye is drawn directly to this corner. And it was hard to look at. So as you can see, the soil is pretty dried out. There are some things that grow here, but they're mostly weeds. We didn't really try to grow a lot of things here because we knew that they wouldn't be very successful. The tree here throws a lot of shade, and so a lot of growth was not going to happen. The flat paving stones that you see here obviously are not very well placed and don't really go with the design of this corner. And the more tall paving stones there, some of them are kind of buried in the soil, and it was pretty crooked. So we decided to fix it. Come along, I'll show you how. The first thing we did was cleared off all of the sporting equipment and the balls and the garbage and buckets, all the things that were there. Now the next thing was these landscaping bricks, these taller paving stones here. They were a bit of an issue because they were half buried in soil that had, kind of run down through the years. This is kind of a lower part of the yard, and so a lot of soil had kind of buried them over time. So Dave ended up digging a trench as best he could to try to replicate the stack of two stones here and make sure that these paving bricks went all the way to the fence. So here he is pouring in some paver base to try to make sure that everything remained as stable as possible for as long as possible. Digging out a trench and then putting down the paver base, and then leveling sand is the proper way to lay down these kind of bricks. So here we're tamping down the paver base and then just throwing in some leveling sand. And the next thing to do was to take the paver bricks and kind of bury them into the leveling sand. And as you can see, Dave continued to try to level them. This was pretty challenging, trying to get them level, but still keeping them to what we could tell was sort of the same level as the buried in the mud stones that were next to these. We had considered the idea of literally digging them all out, and it just didn't seem like that was going to be feasible or practical. And as you can see, once we completed the fence, they actually are pretty well at the same level at the top. And then we went through all the old bricks and sort of rearranged them so that they were a little more cohesive, a little more curved next to each other. And there were some gaps there, so I discovered a lot of things about Dave through this project. One of them is that he has a rock splitter, and he was able to just split some of these rocks and pop them in there. Ooh, how satisfying. Okay, so here is the completed rock wall. As we finished it up here, I took a run around to look at all of the bricks. And as you can see, even though these are older and weathered, they are looking a lot better. They are looking more cohesive. It just wasn't a perfect project. It never was going to be. But there is a completeness to it now and a leveling that makes it look like it's supposed to be there like that. One of the problems that we had was that there was a lot of pooling and kind of flooding that happened in that corner. As I say, this is a lower portion of the yard, and so oftentimes rainwater would come down and pool down in this corner. So we happened to have some soil at the ready that had been sitting around in a pile from a front yard landscaping project, and so we took it wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow and did our best to just kind of fill in some gaps and stomp around and try to get it as level as possible, not being too particular. I don't know if it's possible to be too particular. We just wanted to make sure there weren't really big gouges out of the soil back here. Now the next stage was something we'd never done before. We laid down landscaping fabric and discovered that in order to lay down landscaping fabric, you needed to also pop these pegs in and kind of push them down. I think we got away with using only one roll for this and a lot of landscaping pegs to try to cover all the ground here. The landscaping fabric will mitigate all the weeds that might possibly pop up. We had noticed lots of weeds popping up in this area, and we definitely wanted to decline as many weeds as possible. Now the next stage was to lay down wood chips or mulch. We could have gotten a delivery of wood chips. We figured that would at least take a few days, and this is sort of something we wanted to finish up same day as much as possible. We already had some wood chips from a front yard project, and we went ahead and used all those up very quickly. We ended up purchasing about 20 bags of wood chips. They're not super expensive, but we certainly would have, we would have saved some money by just having a delivery of a flatbed truck dumping some in our front driveway. That is for sure. I'm pretty sure we would have saved money that way. But anyway, it worked for us. And we ended up laying down a pretty thin layer. We've never really worked with wood chips before that much, and so we didn't know how much you would need. And it turns out that the layer that we laid down is actually fairly thin. Sometimes when the wind blows or when we just step back in this corner a lot, we find that we can really see that landscaping fabric, that the wood chips kind of clear out of the way and you can see the fabric underneath. So we're probably going to go ahead and lay down more layers. I figure this is probably something that people have to do through the years anyway. I can kind of continue to layer it on top. I guess we'll learn as the years go by what it is that we are meant to do with this though. I was in Lowe's for a project for my son, and I happened upon this sad-looking fern. I decided we needed to give that fern a new home. It was kind of stuck in this shelf, and so this is what we decided to go ahead and plant back here. There is some morning sun that comes into this area. The instructions said that this fern could get between 3 to 6 hours of morning light, which is probably about what it gets. And so we decided to go ahead and plant it. Part of the reason for this, of course, is to hide that unsightly electrical box there. We needed to be careful about the placement, of course, because I'm sure that city workers or electrical workers would still need access to that box. We didn't want to have to stare at it all day, so this fern was going to do the trick. A lot of the plants that are low light plants are quite short and squat, so I thought this was a pretty good compromise. The first digging spot ran into some trouble because there were some roots that are just below the surface from the large tree in this corner, and so we had to choose another spot that was about a foot forward from that, but everything worked out just fine. We got it planted. It does seem to be thriving. We had planted this a few weeks ago, and this is a current video. It is thriving, living its best life. Well, the basics were in place. The paving bricks were down, the landscape fabric, the wood chips, and even a fern planted. One of the things I noticed was this blank wall over here, this fence, really needed some prettying. I decided to put hanging pots on one of the fences with the permission of neighbors. They have since actually replaced this fence, and it looks quite nice. But this is the project that I did to make it pretty in the meantime. I made a short about this, which I will link below. Ever since we moved into this house almost 4 years ago, we thought that a cute little park bench would look adorable in this corner, and this is what we found. It's pretty decrepit, to be honest. We love it so much. We found it at an antique store. It's a swing. It's an old-fashioned swing. It's really beat up, so it's going to be a project for us to go ahead and replace that. At the same antique shop, we found a bird bath. So both of these are a little bit beat up and need some work, but we love them so much. They're all ours. We love them. We think they look really nice back there. Of course, we're going to be replacing some of the wood on the swinging bench. It really needs it, but we're also probably going to be painting that white. We feel the white painted metal there kind of sticks out in the backyard. It might look nicer as even like a red, like a deep red color might be nice. We'll be thinking about that. In the meantime, it's just fine for sitting and having a little swing in the backyard. Even if you're a little nervous sitting in that thing, it does work. Now this corner over here seemed pretty empty, so we brought a large pot that was sitting on our front porch, and we decided to bring it back here to kind of fill in the space here. And that's the end of the project. We're going to be refurbishing that swinging bench, but we have been sitting in it. We filled the bird bath with water, and the birds are loving it. When the neighbors replaced their fence, of course, we pulled down those pots, and we decided to distribute the little flower pots along the paving bricks here, and that also looks quite nice. Let's remind ourselves what a desolate wasteland this used to be. Now remember that the before pictures were taken in early spring, so it's not an exact like comparison. The tree did not have leaves, that bush back there did not have leaves, but nonetheless, I think the transformation speaks for itself. One of the things that's nice about this corner is that it is extremely low maintenance, other than the fact that we will probably have to fill in wood chips. And of course, we're watering that fern, and we have been watering all those little potted plants. Everything's going really well with that, but other than that, there's not a lot of work to be done, just an area to be enjoyed. This was a project that took about 2 solid days of labor. It stretched beyond 2 days because we didn't know what we were doing and we had to go shopping for certain things and so on. But it's about 2 solid days of labor, $408 in total. We are so happy with the results. We love looking at our backyard now. We could not say that before. So we are just thrilled how it all came out. Hope you enjoyed.